Hi, everyone.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here. So excited to lead this conversation with Lynanne, and I know I only get 20 minutes with her, so let's jump into it, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, maybe a good place to start is tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Vail Resorts.
Sure. So you heard about my background. I started as a chemical engineer turned HR leader, which is another story for another day. But I went to Carnegie Mellon and I started my career in manufacturing operations. Spent about 11 years doing that before I moved into HR at P&G, and then left P&G in 2010 to go to Whirlpool. I was there for about 8 years before I came here 7 years ago to be the Chief Human Resources Officer at Vail Resorts. So Vail Resorts, if you're not familiar with us, we are a global ski company. We own and operate 42 ski resorts in 4 countries around the world, so US, Canada, Switzerland, and Australia. We operate under the Epic Pass, which is our gateway essentially to all of the resorts in our network. And we've been growing. We've been growing our footprint, growing our network, because we believe that the value of the pass inherently lies in the accessibility of our and reach of our network. So we have grown rapidly over the last 10 years from 10 resorts 10 years ago to now we have 42. So as we talk today, we'll be talking about some of the things that have come with that and some of the ways that we are investing in our growing workforce.
Sure. Well, and I know we Coloradans are very familiar with the ski industry. The season's coming up. For people who might not be familiar, maybe we could set the scene and tell them a little bit about, what are the differences and responsibilities between your seasonal workforce and your year-round workforce?
Yeah, so we have a pretty interesting employment model. So the vast majority of our workforce are seasonal employees. Mm-hmm. So we have about 55,000 employees total at peak, and actually about 49,000 of them are seasonal. And our seasonal workforce is our front line. Mm-hmm. Our business is the experience business, so our mission is the experience of a lifetime. And so our employees, our frontline employees, are actually the ones that deliver that experience to the guest. And so our mission, what we talk about is the full articulation, is we create the experience of a lifetime for our employees, so they in turn can create the experience of a lifetime for our guests. And so we put a lot of emphasis on understanding our frontline employee experience and investing to make sure that we are creating the experience of a lifetime for them so that they are in the best position to do so for our guests. The year-round workforce really has 2 components. A large part of our year-round workforce are our frontline managers. And so they actually have a very direct impact on our frontline employee experience. And so we have a number of priorities and initiatives that invest in them and their capability in service to our frontline teams. And then, of course, we have a corporate office that looks like every corporate office that is out there. We have all the kind of standard corporate functions headquartered here in Broomfield, Colorado.
Perfect. Well, and I know that there are some changes happening within the company that were announced recently that are going to take place over the next 2 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that and its impact on the company?
Yeah, so we just announced last Thursday in our earnings call that we are embarking on a 2-year resource efficiency transformation plan. So I mentioned that we have grown rapidly from 10 to 42 resorts. Over that time period, our workforce has more than doubled. And we, over that time, in the last couple of years, have been quite public in our intention to expand globally. We have 2 resorts now, 3 resorts in Australia, but more recently 2 resorts in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And we are very committed to continuing to build out Europe as our next region of operation. And so as we've looked at what it's going to take for us to support the global expansion of our company into other geographies, mm-hmm. this was a good time for us to take a look at our organization effectiveness, really invest in some great org design work in order to scale the company to support that expansion. And so that's what that is all about.
Okay. And how does the seasonality of your workforce impact, employee retention and recruitment?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, frontline employees, seasonal employees, they have a choice every season to decide, do they want to re-up with Vail Resorts or do they want to go do something different? And so we certainly have, over the years, we have spent a lot of time really trying to understand what differentiates the frontline experience. A couple of years ago, at the height of COVID, back in the 21-22 season, that's when the global labor shortage was taking place. I'm sure we all had our own experiences with that. We really had to think a lot more deeply about what is it that differentiates an experience with Vail Resorts as a seasonal employee, a frontline employee, from any other company. And it was at that time that we refreshed our employee value proposition. Our value proposition is explore, grow, belong, and we invested $175 million in employee experience through a combination of wages, benefits, frontline development programs, frontline recognition programs, all in service to the idea that our frontline employees, what we say is they don't work for Vail Resorts. Actually, they are Vail Resorts. They are the experience that is the differentiator for our guests. And so at that time, we really kind of doubled down on our commitment to our front line, and against this value proposition of explore, grow, belong, we looked at ways that we could attract the very best talent, frontline talent from the market, give them opportunities to come for a season but stay for a career through coming in and exploring different job types, being able to invest in them in development programs that open up new opportunities for career growth. And then certainly our DEI programming has really unlocked this idea of inclusion and belonging.
And I'm glad that you mentioned opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit more about opportunities that maybe a seasonal worker, like a ski lift chair operator, would have to expand his or her career, through Vail Resorts for the years to come?
Yeah, well, certainly when employees come in, frontline employees come in, we have a workforce management system and tool that allows them to qualify. They come in for a particular job, but they can qualify in skills to be able to work different jobs beyond kind of their core job. And as they get qualified and they get badged for different roles, our workforce management tool allows them to see open available shifts, and they can sign up for those shifts, and they can get a broad set of experiences besides, let's say, if their core role was a lift operator, they could get broad exposure. And actually what is beneficial to them is they can get access to hours, work hours outside of their core scheduled hours, which a lot of people want to do. So that's the first way that they can get exposure to see what else is out there. Assuming they are a good performer and that they're in good standing, they also get the opportunity to get invited back for subsequent seasons, which could look like the next winter season, or it could look like, for our very highest performers, it could look like the opportunity to stay through for summer. And we have a program, a development program that is called Epic Service Summer, that is an opportunity for them to get a differentiated development experience as part of their summer employment. And what we found is for those individuals who have gone through that programming, actually we're preparing them for career progression. And we found that the participants in that program, they are getting promoted in their next season at 5 times the rate of their peers and at 2 times the rate of their other high-performing peers. And then the same thing, what we've seen is that these individuals in this program, if they're not getting promoted, they're moving laterally into other career pathways about 3 times the rate of their peers at large, and again, 2 times the rate of their high-performing peers. So we have structured programming that allows them to explore, and then through the exploration process, create new pathways to grow.
Sure. So housing, in mountain towns, it's expensive. How is
Yes, it
Vail
is.
Resorts addressing this challenge for its employees?
Yeah, it's tough. We've also been quite public about our commitment to invest in housing, and we invest in two ways. We certainly, in our resort communities, we have land that we own, and we build housing that is owned and operated by Vail Resorts, and then we also have master leases with other developers in our resort communities so that we can support employees if they want to come for a season. Typically, the largest majority of people who live in our housing are first-year seasonal employees. It's a little harder when you don't know the community to come in and find affordable housing over time. People generally find housing that can work for them. What I will say though is it's quite a partnership with our communities. You know, there's a lot of different perspectives in the communities about housing, employee housing, affordable housing, and so we spend a lot of time working with our community partners to make sure that we have sufficient affordable housing for our seasonal workforce, who in many ways they become the bedrock of the community for that season, and it's another investment in them so that they can serve our guests in that community and also contribute to the economic vitality of the community.
Sure. So across the board, I mean, Lynanne, what would you say are some of the biggest issues facing Vail Resorts when it comes to staffing, and how is the company trying to resolve these issues?
Yeah, I mean, I would say our toughest time with staffing was back in that winter of 2021-22, and I think, you know, now mostly what we're doing is focused on returners. So we have this refreshed value proposition. We are using different types of tools and technologies to attract the best talent, frontline talent, and then we're using our data inside the company to figure out how to invest in the places that create the most differentiated experience. And what we're finding actually is that if we can continue to invest in ways that make frontline talent want to make a career out of it, we can actually get a quite high return rate. So this past season we had record engagement, we had record return rates, and actually we are seeing a correlation, a very strong correlation between the investments we've made in employee experience, those employee experience metrics, and now our guest experience metrics. We're seeing that when we're investing in employees in very data-driven and intentional ways, we're seeing that translate into how they serve our guests. And so our challenges right now are really, how do we make sure we understand what makes a returner want to come back and grow and perform with Vail Resorts? And so that's where we're focused right now.
Well, and kind of looking at the ski industry in broad strokes, I mean, the sport itself has a reputation for being homogenous. Although there are efforts being made to promote diversity within the ski industry, I mean, how is Vail Resorts doing this within its own workforce?
Yeah, so you are very accurate in describing the industry as homogenous, and we as a company have made a declaration that the future of the sport is inclusion. We're a very data-driven company. The Epic Pass, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it essentially is an access to a CRM system where we understand our guests and our guest behaviors and their preferences in an extreme amount of detail. And with the Epic Pass and the data that comes from it, we're able to make really targeted investments in improving the guest experience in a data-driven way. And over the last several years, we have followed a similar journey on employee experience, where we have data and we really use our data to understand our employees, understand what they need, and invest in the employee experience in a data-driven way. And so one of the things that we're really looking at from a DEI standpoint is demographics. The demographics of our industry, currently the demographics of society at large, and as you can imagine, there's a massive gap between the demographic mix of the current ski guest base and where the broader societal demographic mix is going. And so we're watching this and we're learning some things. So just a fun fact, over 70% of skiers start the sport as beginners below the age of 18. So they start as kids. If you look at the demographic mix of kids today, right now, in the United States, it is over majority non-white. So the industry is 88% white. The future of the industry is really, we're counting on these kids to start skiing before the age of 18, largely. I mean, adults do learn to ski, but the vast majority start as kids. And kids in the United States today are majority non-white. So that gives us actually a pretty compelling business imperative to say, if we don't invest now in the future of the sport, and remember we say the future of the sport is inclusion, if we don't invest now in building inclusive resorts where people feel welcome to come, whether they have a heritage in the ski industry or they're just getting exposed to it for the first time, if we don't do that, our business actually will not be sustainable. We will not have sustainable growth over time. So the future of the sport is inclusion. We're going to invest in making our resorts welcoming. The best way to make our resorts welcoming is to make sure that we have those skills inside of the company, in our employee base, and the best way to make sure that we are going to be as inclusive and welcoming as possible to our guests is to aspire to have our internal employee demographic mix mirror what we believe is the demographic mix of the future of the sport. And so that's where we are focused right now. And I will say, I mean, it's quite a challenge because we're not starting with an industry that generally reflects those aspirations and goals. And so we are, by size for sure, we are the leader in the industry, and we see it as a very important part of our industry leadership role to make sure that we are literally changing the face of the future of the sport.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned earlier kind of the global presence that Vail Resorts has. As you're seeking out new large-scale acquisitions in Europe and elsewhere, I mean, how are you ensuring the quality of your individual employee experience?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that we are data-driven, and we're very, very focused on the frontline employee experience. I mean, our mission, experience of a lifetime. We create the experience of a lifetime for employees, so they in turn can create the experience of a lifetime for our guests. That mission actually is quite genuine, and it's quite deeply, deeply ingrained in the way everyone in our company thinks, feels, focuses, prioritizes. So I think first and foremost, the way we do that is by keeping our mission front and center, continuing to commit to investing in the employee experience and understanding it in a data-driven way in service to the guest experience. And then just going back to this resource efficiency transformation that we just announced, the whole idea of this is to create a scalable platform as we grow to allow our frontline teams to focus on the guest experience and give them the scalable tools and support that they need to be able to do that in the most efficient, effective way.
Well, and I know you guys have so many other great speakers and panels coming up, so I only get Lynanne for one more minute, although I'm sure we could chat for another 40. So maybe as a good place to end, I'd love to take this last minute to talk about the plans for the future. I mean, what does Vail Resorts plan to do over the next, say, decade, and where do employees fit into these plans?
Yeah, so we plan to grow, in short. So our resource efficiency transformation plan is all in service to future growth and global expansion. So we have 5 core growth strategies that will carry us through the next 7 to 10 years. The first one is what we call grow our subscription model, and that's essentially our season pass business, the Epic Pass business, and converting as many of our guests as we can to a season pass. That allows us to create stability of our revenue stream despite what is increasingly volatile variable weather patterns due to climate change. So that's the first thing. Second thing is growing our ancillary business. Ancillary are all of those experiences that come with a day or a week of skiing. So food and beverage, retail, rental, lodging, all of those things that surround that guest experience besides just the skiing and riding. And so we have over 2 million pass holders. That gives us a lot of data to understand what they need from their experience, and so we're continuing to invest in that. And then, of course, we talked about resource efficiency transformation. We have a strategy around differentiating the guest experience, which is about investing in our frontline employees and investing in other aspects, data-driven aspects of the guest experience. And then the last one is to expand our resort network, which, as I mentioned, we're heavily focused in Europe right now.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lynanne, for joining me up here for our chat, and thank you all so much for attending our opening conversation.
Thanks, everyone.